All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Today, I'm looking forward to going through some year-end planning opportunities around Section 179D tax deductions. Um, for those of you who may or may not know me, I'm David Diaz. I'm the managing partner here at Walker Reid Strategies. Walker Reid Strategies is a specialty energy tax incentive provider that specializes in all sorts of energy tax incentives. Very specifically, probably what we do the most of is Section 179D. We also work on Section 45L, which is a residential tax credit that has some nice opportunities for projects that were built in 2021, 2022. We work around utility tax exemptions in the state and local tax group here at the firm, where we certify projects that manufacturing facilities who may be erroneously paying tax on their utility bills. And we also do some specialty consulting around Section 48 and 30C with um, renewable energy incentives and tax credits, um, sometimes referred to as the investment tax credit, ITC, as well. Um, but today we're going to focus mainly on 179D and some of the things that kind of create some good opportunities um, for the your clients or yourselves as you plan on doing some year-end planning and you start looking some forward vision into the future. The idea is here is what can you do now to help you be prepared for maximizing these tax incentives, right? We don't necessarily want to have tax incentives be the driver of your business. But at the same time, if it's part of your business structure and part of your plan to take advantage of the Section 179D, um, there's a couple tricks and things that can be done on the front end to prepare you for maximizing the incentives, prepare you for monetizing the incentives a little sooner via estimated tax payments and proper planning. So there's a lot of opportunities there that can be leveraged, and my goal is to kind of cover some of that today with everybody. So with that being said, let's get started here. Uh, First of all, I want to kind of discuss 179D from a call it basics perspective. In order to really understand what you're planning for, it's good that you have a good understanding of what 179D is and what the opportunities are. So 179D really gets divided into two separate categories. When you look here, you'll basically see that there's the 179D opportunity for designers. So that would be if you're a CPA or if you have clients that do or design work as far as designing work for tax exempt entities like universities, schools, government buildings, nonprofits, etc. That is one opportunity for the 179D and kind of this left side of the slide here. And then when we look at 179D, there's also the opportunity of taking advantage of it for building owners themselves, right? So if you have a commercial building that was built or you're going to build, or you have or you're in the real estate development or have clients who are real estate developers who are looking to develop properties, commercial properties, there's some opportunities there around the 179D as well. So it's really two incentives in one if you want to look at it that way. It really creates some good opportunities from that point of view as far as 179D goes. So what qualifies when we're looking here at what building types qualify? When we're looking at the designer's side, it's all public buildings or nonprofit buildings. So we're looking at schools, state house, military bases, libraries, nonprofit, tribal government. If it's any level of tax exempt entity, they have the ability to allocate the 179D back to the designer. When we're talking about building owners and developers, we're looking at basically any commercial building that's privately owned, or if it's a multifamily building, it has to be 4 stories or more. So again, these are the building types and what type of opportunities may lie there from that perspective. Now, in order to qualify for the 179D, there is the requirement to reduce your energy consumption. So, and when you think, well, if I'm building a new construction building, how do I reduce my energy consumption? The way 179D works is it you have to design and build to meet and exceed a certain energy code standard that the IRS sets forth, which in this case is currently ASHRAE 90.1 2007 as a baseline. So the 179D allows you to take advantage of the incentives and claim the incentives only if you meet certain qualifying criteria from an energy perspective. So that's kind of call it your buy-in to get the energy incentive where you need to be from an energy perspective. If you're there and you qualify at least a minimum requirement, then you have the ability to take advantage of these incentives. So who benefits when we're looking at this designer side of the 179D? It's basically anybody who's responsible for the design and creation of the technical specifications. So you got architects, engineers, energy service companies, contractors, who are all involved in the design build. They are the ones that may be allocated these tax deductions. When we look at for the building owner side, obviously it would be the whoever owns the building, whoever has taxable, depreciable basis in the asset that is being built or remodeled or retrofitted. They're the ones who are going to be able to take advantage of that tax deduction. So something to note here is that the 179D, when we're looking at it for building owners, is a tax deduction, but it comes in the form of accelerated depreciation. So if you're familiar with bonus depreciation, qualified improvement property benefits, or Section 179 depreciation benefits. The 179D is very similar to that, where it's basically additional year one accelerated depreciation that the building owner gets to take. So again, that's part of the strategy too. You have to have the desire to take accelerated depreciation if you're a building owner. All right, so what qualifies from an energy perspective? This is going to be the same across both categories. It's really any improvements or any new construction that has significant energy savings around lighting, HVAC, and building envelope systems. So it really looks at, I mean, those are the core components of the core drivers of the tax incentive. Those are the ones that are going to get you to qualify. So that's a critical kind of component there. So that you have to, if you're in a retrofit scenario, you have to be making improvements to those categories: lighting, HVAC, building envelope. New construction automatically kind of incorporates all of those systems as well. So as far as construction types, we got new construction, remodel, retrofit. Those are all candidates, right? The key here is that you have new taxable spend, the new depreciable spend on CapEx of new improvements, whether it be new construction or remodel or retrofit type improvements to commercial buildings. Currently, the deduction in 2024 has been up to $5.65 per square foot. In 2025, it's bumping up to $5.81 per square foot as a max. And that is based on a sliding scale. So really, the incentive goes anywhere from 50 cents to that $5 and change a square foot, depending on what level of qualification you come in at, and are you meeting prevailing wage and labor requirements, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on in the presentation. So, as far as opportunities, typically, for a project to be a decent opportunity, we're looking at square footage that's around 20,000 square foot or larger on a particular project for it to be a viable opportunity for Section 179D. As far as qualification timelines go, we can go back for designers, if you have past projects that you've done, you can go back and amend 3 years tax returns and take advantage of this incentive. When we look at it from a building owner's perspective, you have the ability to go back all the way to 2006 in theory, because you don't have to amend tax returns to take advantage of it. It's just a simple 3115 form that needs to get filed and can create some of those opportunities. So, as far as what are the requirements, in order for you to be able to take these 1790 tax deductions, you need to have a certification that's performed by an independent third party. That's our role. That's the role that Walker Reid plays. We are that independent third party that verifies and certifies that your commercial building or your improvements to your commercial building are in compliance and they meet the criteria of the Section 1790 energy tax incentives. So that's kind of the 1790 basics column in a nutshell from that point of view. There's really, you got to kind of have some understanding of where the program comes from and where it goes. So, on a different level here, as many folks are very well aware of, the Inflation Reduction Act made some major impacts to the 1790. So I kind of use this as a reference to provide what the difference are when we're looking at it, between the legacy program, the program that's 2022 and before, and the new program that's post-Inflation Reduction Act, which is any projects placed in service in 2023 or later. So first off, historically, the program used to be up to $1.80 per square foot only. So now they bumped it up to that $5 plus inflation adders that they put in there. So they really did bump it up pretty substantially from a potential opportunity max perspective. Historically, under the legacy program, you were able to take advantage of the program at per category basis. You could look at it just lighting, just HVAC, just building envelope. If your whole building didn't meet the full $1.80 per square foot when you did the whole building analysis, you could go and break it out into those partial categories and go get partial deductions at 60 cents a square foot. Um, Under the new program, they got rid of all those partial category analysis. And yes, there's still this partial benefit that you could take advantage of. But that partial benefit, the way it works is if you meet certain energy criteria, a minimum of 25% reduction against the ASHRAE baseline, you can then achieve a 50% reduction against, I'm sorry, you can get the 50 cents per square foot as the minimum. And then it's a sliding scale until you hit the 50% and you get a max of $1 per square foot. And then you go, well, how do we get to the $5 a square foot? That comes in the form of meeting the labor requirements. So your 50 cents to $1 per square foot turns into $2.50 to $5 per square foot by getting a 5 times multiplier for meeting that those prevailing wage and labor requirements. Just realized my camera was off, so I apologize for that. Um, so historically, there were no labor requirements. You just, if you made the energy improvements to the building, you could take advantage of it. But again, you had less of an opportunity. So in theory, when you look at this, they did reduce the deduction, bringing it down to a max of $1 a square foot. So they kind of affected it in that fashion, but then they gave you an opportunity to take advantage and maximize it by complying with the labor requirements. And again, I'll get into those labor requirements here a little bit later. And there's some tax planning opportunities there, or some planning opportunities there, because it really does take some pre-construction thought to be compliant with those labor requirements. So it's important that those things commence and start early. So as far as what the legacy program used to look like for designers, only government-owned buildings used to historically be able to allocate these deductions. When we look at it now, all tax-exempt organizations have the ability to allocate the deduction to the designers. So that was a nice change there. It widened and broadened the base of folks who can take advantage of these tax deductions, where historically that sector was just completely negated out of the law. They had no ability to take advantage of it. So, um, as far as the methodology to certify the program, the changes kind of came where before you could do whole building or partial category analysis. Currently, under the new program, you can only do the whole building analysis to take advantage of it. So, additionally, previously, the deduction was limited to $1.80 per square foot over the lifetime of that building. Now we have the ability to recertify a building once every 3 years if it's private, or every 4 years if it's a tax exempt building. As long as there's new CapEx being spent on that building or new improvements being made to it, we can go ahead and take advantage of that again in the future, where historically that was not an opportunity. So a good example there is, if you had a school, for example, that came in and retrofitted all their lighting system in 2022, and then 5 years later they come in and do major HVAC improvements. So in 2022, we could go get them the $1.80 per square foot under 1790. And now in 2025 or six, we can come in and get them the new $5 if they meet the requirements for that new HVAC work that was being done. A little caveat there is that we get to use the benefits that were already provided from the 2292 project from an engineering perspective. So that'll help in the qualification of the 2025 future project. So it's created a lot of flexibility with the program there by making that addition. So, and the last thing that they changed is that historically we used to be able to certify parking garages under the interim lighting rule. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do so because they got rid of the interim lighting rule and just kept that whole building methodology. They are coming up with or there is the part of the law includes a energy use intensity methodology, which allows us to do a pre and post analysis on retrofits, but the IRS is yet to come out with guidance as far as what that looks like from a, how would we go about actually certifying one of those projects? We don't have the guidance yet from the IRS. So, now, something I don't not necessarily have a slide in here, but when we talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and we think back, we just had a pretty sizable, pretty important election here this year, and as we go and transition to the Trump administration, what does that mean for some of these Inflation Reduction Act incentives? And there's obviously this is all speculation, but Trump has been pretty out there about speaking on the subject that he thinks this is the green new scam, right? So a lot of these changes here, I'm not saying that they're going to go away. I don't think they're going to go away. I think that just like Trump came into the office back his first go around, that he came in and really pushed hard on Obamacare. I think we're going to see a very similar, almost surgical approach to peeling back some of the Inflation Reduction Act items. Specifically, I think the Inflation Reduction Act, I know we're talking about it from 179D, but 179D is a very, very small component of the Inflation Reduction Act. When we look at it from a kind of big picture perspective, um, there's other things in there that the Republicans aren't too fond of, especially around renewables and wind and some of those really costly incentives and provisions that were thrown into the Inflation Reduction Act. Something that may go away is this labor requirement. That would be ideal. The best case scenario for 179D's purposes is the labor requirements go away, but they keep these higher rates, or adjust back to the way the rates used to be. But who knows, right? I don't have a crystal ball to know what Congress is and the Senate are going to do when they sit down and try to go through these things. But needless to say, it is important to note that is a possibility. There could be more changes coming here in the future. I don't think it'll happen, day one. of the new administration being in office. I think it's something we're going to see happen further down the road. But that being said, if you have clients who are kind of on the fence and aren't too sure if how much 179D they want to take, or if they should really, sometimes I get clients who have excess opportunity, especially in the architects, engineers, contractor side of the deduction. They have excess opportunities, and they kind of look at this and go, "Huh, well, I want to cap out at $1 million or $2 million in deductions this year." It might be worth looking at them and saying, "Hey, maybe, we don't know if this is going to change. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit right now. Why don't you go and claim as much 179D as possible and carry some of that forward on future suspended losses, because you do have the ability to carry those losses forward. And then if there is some change that comes or reduces the opportunity or whatnot, kind of have that banked here for the future." So again, as you're thinking of planning opportunities around 179D, the political impacts that could or could not come from the administration change, it may be a good opportunity to go, "Hey, maybe it's worth spending a little bit more money this year and taking more 179D deductions and having them just in case there's a change," right? So just something to think about from that point of view. All right. So what are good opportunity types? I kind of mentioned it before. It's new construction, alterations, additions, retrofits, and energy service projects, right? These are all good opportunities for 179D, and should all be projects that if you're looking to take advantage of the 179D, you should be looking at pre-planning to make sure that they're going to qualify from an energy criteria perspective, that you're in compliance with the labor requirements if you're planning on doing that piece of it. And again, that a lot of that has to happen on the front end of these projects from a planning perspective. The days of 179D being solely a retroactive opportunity where it's like you would send us our list of projects, we'd go through it and just certify whatever was there. That's changing a little bit because now there's a lot more things to consider. There's a lot more consulting that needs to occur on the front end. And again, we're here to help you guys as a partner when it comes to all that. So something to note is that, software only or commissioning only or non-energy saving measures, like if you were to go do refrigeration, or, a something that was unrelated, something business use wise during your construction, those things all get backed out and aren't good opportunities for 179D. So let's talk a little bit about the designer, and who is the designer and what does that allocation look like. So when I mentioned designers can be allocated the 179D tax deduction as part of their projects, right? So if you're an architect, engineer, contractor that does design build, and it's very important for contractors that do design build, electrical, HVAC, or building envelope contractors, they have to be in a design build capacity. Same thing with environmental consultants or energy service companies. All those trades need to really be involved in the design. But if they are involved in design and they have tax liability and tax appetites there, you have the ability for any of your tax exempt projects that get worked on to be allocated the deduction back to the designer, right? So there's a lot of planning here as well, because one of the things that I like to really, really harp on and really tell everybody that's important is if you can add language early on in your agreements with your clients, in your terms and conditions, if you can add some verbiage that basically states that this section 179D tax deduction belongs to you contractually. It's part of your contractual obligation. Their clients are obligated to allocate it to you. They can't use it anyway. So you're not taking something away from them that has some sort of value. It doesn't have any value for them. They either don't allocate it to anyone or they can allocate it to whomever they choose that is a designer. Um, one of the big takeaways here is from a planning perspective, make sure that you have something in your agreements that contractually throws that your direction so that at the end of the project, when the project's complete in a year or two or three or whenever that project may be done, depending on how big it is, you don't have to go and beg and plead and barter and negotiate as to what is this worth to me, right? What is this worth to them? And, why would they give it to you as the designer? Or your client as the designer when what's in it for us type scenario that they're going to run into here. So you could quickly point back to your contract, say, hey, per section 5 of our T and Cs, this is belongs to us. This is entitled to us. We figured this in our proposal process. It's part of our financial, considerations for this particular project. So that's a very, very important piece of the pie when it comes to the designers of the energy efficient commercial building property, new buildings, retrofits, and whatnot, being in a position that is favorable for allocation is very important because, look, as this becomes more and more popular, if the Inflation Reduction Act has done anything for 179D, it has increased its popularity significantly. So not only do you have substantially more um, folks taking advantage of the program, you have substantially more um, providers like us, like Walker Reid out here, right? We've been on here. We're old guard of 179D at this point. When you look at us, we're one of 4 or 5 companies that very early on started doing these incentives. You go back to 2009 or so, when this really became popular in 2008. We've been doing this for a minute or two. Every day there's a new 179D provider that comes out of the woodworks. There may be some on this presentation right now, just kind of listening to what I got to say about this because it happens often. But there's new folks that kind of pop in and come into this industry, and they're pushing this, right? They're pushing on architects and getting more awareness, just like we are. There's a mass effort out there to inform designers, architects, engineers, contractors that um, excuse me, that the 179D exists and that they should be taking advantage of it. And therefore, there's could be more bodies essentially vying for those allocation letters because of that. It's not like it used to be where you were kind of in the dark, and nobody really knew about it or few people knew about it. And now more people than not are aware of the incentive and are trying to go and claim it and take advantage of it. So again, get your allocation letters aligned early, so from a planning perspective, so that you can take advantage of the incentive. So let's talk a little bit about prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So like I mentioned, if you want to maximize and get the $5 plus inflation kickers versus the $1 plus inflation kickers, you do have to, starting in 2023 and beyond, you do have to meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. This is not a simple topic. This could be a webinar all on its own. I'm going to touch kind of the high level of it, and then talk about some of the planning things that can be done. But the key here is all the laborers on the job have to be paid the published prevailing wage for the project. And number two, 15% or better of the labor hours on the jobs have to be performed by apprentices that are part of a registered apprenticeship program. So that's, just big picture, what has to be there. Look, there's lots of intricacies. I can help you out. I can provide you with some really good providers that specialize in this space. We're an engineering firm. We don't specialize in this prevailing wage consulting piece, but I can definitely speak or put you off onto the right track when it comes there. Now, from a planning perspective, why is it important to plan for prevailing wage and apprenticeship on the front end? And one of the main things is that understanding that the prevailing wage and apprenticeship piece needs to be paid on the labor as it relates to the energy efficient commercial building property. So that's what this acronym is here, energy efficient commercial building property. So what that means is you have um, certain components of the construction project that are going to be exempt from meeting prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement because they aren't part of our analysis for certifying the Section 179D. So only the things that are relevant around the design and construction of lighting, HVAC, and the building envelope systems and hot water systems, those are the ones that are going to need to be in compliance with the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So it's important to know from a planning perspective on the front end, what does that look like? What components of my build of our budget, what pieces of those costs are going to be the ones that get allocated towards this 179D? And if so, what do you have to do with your subcontractors or contractors and laborers to make sure that those particular trades are in compliance and that you're not missing anything. That's an analysis we can help with. We can help you understand if we get a set of prints and we get your cost, we can kind of look at it and say, hey, you know, make sure that these certain components are in compliance with the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So um, this is just a little bit of an explanation as far as what cost may be included in that. And this is not a comprehensive list by all stretches of the imagination, but it is a pretty good generic list of most of the areas that need to meet those requirements. So again, electrical, HVAC, and building envelope, electrical labor, and lighting and controls. So I say you incorporate all of your electrical labor, not just the lighting piece, as part of the analysis, just because in order to make sure you're in compliant, I think that's an important piece that basically your electrician and low voltage folk, controls folk, all the folks that are affecting those energy systems need to be in compliance with the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. Any HVAC and controls labor. The envelope is where it starts to get tricky, right? So the envelope, basically, your prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement needs to incorporate all the parts of the building envelope that essentially make up and separate the interior of the project from the exterior thermal factors of the world, essentially. But so we're looking at site preparation as it relates to the slab and foundation needs to be in compliance. The entire building structure, all the windows and doors, exterior facade, and what makes up your wall insulation, your insulation, the roofing, drywall, even the paint on the interior and exterior, right? We can exclude, decorative painting or molding work and all that. But when we're looking at it, your paint is part of the thermal features of the building, right? What color the building is, what paint has on both sides of the wall. They do make up part of the thermal parts of the building and the wall system, and they all go into the analysis from an energy perspective of what we are looking at from a 179D point of view. And all those costs need to be incorporated in that prevailing wage and apprenticeship piece. Some of the costs to be excluded, we're looking at, your civil design, anything with power generation, solar and EV charging, refrigeration, any special filtration systems or specialty clean rooms or anything like that. Finishes as far as like flooring, cabinetries, trim, or any business specific use assets. Those things don't have to be. You're not claiming an incentive on them. They're not, makes no difference how much you spend or don't spend on them. Or how efficient or not they may be. They're not going to affect the Section 179D from that point of view. So, gonna go over a little bit on how, kind of an example of what that looks like. Specifically, this example was looked at to try to see if uh, try to see if the client met the safe harbor provisions and could have been exempt from the project. So the way that works, and I'll go to this and then I'll come back to it, is in order to there's two ways to be exempt from the prevailing wage. So to get that 5 times multiplier, you either A, meet the requirements of the prevailing wage apprenticeship program. B, you meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship exemptions, which basically state that you either had to have started construction, this is the beginning of construction definition here, or you had to have spent 5% um, on the energy efficient components of the building that make up the 179D study prior to January 29th of 2023. So again, that's part of this analysis. But this analysis also helps kind of illustrate um, how the Section 179D cost um, become part of the equation, right? And what areas would need to meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement if it didn't meet the 5%. So in this particular project, we kind of looked out, hey, these were the costs that were incurred prior to January. Oh, I keep pressing the button. I'm sorry. Prior to January 29th of 2023. This project was borderline. It did not meet the beginning of construction test. And these costs here, you had the concept design, construction drawings, and whatnot. Basically, we came through and backed out everything that was non-eligible energy efficient commercial building property. So like your site lighting and photometrics, that's not part of the 179D analysis. Exterior photometrics, not part of it. Your monument sign, also not part of it. Dumpster enclosure, again, not part of the design. So we got rid of that and basically stated that, hey, they spent 139,000 of eligible cost here. And then at the end of the project, they had all these costs that were the total number. There's about 5 million of it. So they spent 139 out of the 5 million, which ended up being 2.5 percent. So they didn't meet the 5% safe harbor, which basically means that, hey, all of this labor here on this right side needs to meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirement in order for them to be able to claim the tax deduction and take advantage of the incentive at the maximum level. So, all right, what does the path to certification look like? What needs to be kind of considered from that point of view, from a planning perspective? First off, we typically partner up. We are your tax incentive partner. We'll partner up with CPAs, specialty tax firms that we kind of work with, and we'll go and help do discovery and identify some opportunities and determine, whether they can be allocated or not. Then our team will perform a complementary feasibility study. So again, if you need to know if something qualifies, if it makes sense, get us in early. Even on projects that are coming up in the future, get them to us. Let us do a feasibility analysis. It's complimentary. It's not going to cost you anything. We can take a peek at it for you, and within a week or so, can let you know, hey, this is a good project or it's not a good project, etc. So after that, we're going to perform the engineered energy modeling piece of the equation. Once we're engaged to do the work, we will have to perform that analysis to determine that the building meets the energy criteria that would qualify it for Section 179D. That's part of the certification process that we do. Then we have to do site verification. So the IRS does require us to site verify projects that they are were met. The energy efficient commercial building property was placed in service. We got to go put our eyes on that as the independent certifier. So that is part of the requirement. It's something we handle for you. And then the certification report. So the certification report itself is the deliverable we'll present to you guys. And then there's a 7205 form, which we can share with you as well, that your CPA needs to file. So we don't fully fill out the 7205 form for you. We do assist with it and kind of map all of our certification data that's relevant to it so that your CPA can finalize and complete it and get it filed through either e-filed or their tax software. And that's how you get the deduction, right? So this is the path and the process. And well, when you look at this, you go, hey, how long does this take? Typically, once we have a green light to get started on the work, it's usually about 6 to 8 weeks max that it'll take us to certify a project for 179D. when you look at it from a designer's point of view, you need to plan for more time if you're a designer, if you're being allocated the deduction, because the variable here is, yeah, we can do the certification on the building right away, right? And we can get it done 4, 6, 5, 7, 8 weeks, whatever that time frame might be, depending on our load. But the issue isn't really with us. The issue comes in the allocation, because you don't know how long it's going to take once you start the allocation request process for the tax exempt entities to allocate it to you. So again, starting earlier is better. It's important to start as early as possible on that process so that you're not, jumping at the bit against tax deadlines. And what do those tax deadlines kind of look like? Well, it depends. If you're, this is assuming a fixed fiscal year tax filer. If you're an S corp, you got a March 17th filing deadline coming up in 2025, and the personal filing deadline, which is usually when you have to pay your estimated tax for the year, happens on April 15th. So you got that's around the corner. So if you have a list of projects, now's the time to get started on them. Don't wait to start on them beginning of March when you're going to be jammed up against this March 17th deadline, and then you'll say, hey, well, fine, we'll extend, but we need to know by April 15th. Why? Let's get that going on the front end. Let's start getting those allocation letters for the designers really early, because the sooner you ask, the better. Because look, it's just like everything else. People like to procrastinate on their tax filings, and that's a normal human nature thing. It's something that nobody likes to do, and this just becomes another task within that analysis, right, of the tax filing. So get it done early. If you know this is part of your strategy and it's something you're interested in, we do feasibilities and we do projects year round. We don't have to wait to do them for you in tax season. So again, if you miss this April 15th and March 15th deadline dates, and you kind of go, hey, now, you know what? We like to punt, right? We're going to extend this and extend our returns. Um, then you got September 15th is really the, due date, the hard due date where it's all due. And then you have the October 15th where I have every now and then I have somebody, file here without the 179D and they were really late on it. And then they ask us they'll go and amend this return before if they're filing their October 15th so that their October 15th personal filing can be accurate. So again, I would estimate if you have allocations that are getting done, I would estimate anywhere from 4 to 6 months for those projects that need to be allocated. Again, you may have a very quick way to get the allocation letters if you do, but my experience is it takes some time. You may get an allocation letter back in a day. It may take 3 months. It may have to go to the board. They may have to get it reviewed. There's a lot of different things that go in with these tax exempt entities that that are part of that equation. So just keep that in mind. Again, we can move very quickly, especially around these deadline dates. Our team can usually work some magic for you if you get in a jam. But if you do a little bit of planning on the front end and you're proactive, you don't need to be up against the wall or paying us any special fees to rush things. There's a lot of opportunities there to take advantage of that. So what are some actionable items here? Again, designers that need to add language to that, if you can, add language to your agreement. Something to consider as well as far as how much load of 179D you're planning to take is that starting in 2027, the ASHRAE code standard is going to bump up, and it's going to bump up a lot. So right now, it's very easy to qualify for Section 179D. We are operating under ASHRAE 2007 standard. It's very easy for the requirements to be met. When we go further down the line, we're looking at 2027, and it bumps up to ASHRAE 2019 as the baseline standard, which is going to be much more difficult to qualify for. So anything that can get placed in service prior to the end of 26, I recommend you get it done. If you can and you have the ability to, put a little pep in your step and let's get those projects completed and certified so that you don't have to face this new upcoming ASHRAE standard. So, and then, look, we can always do pre-construction studies. We've been doing a lot of pre-construction studies for folks. on the front end, before projects even get started, to determine the value of what the 179D will be at the end. We can do those studies for you, and it's a marginal, tiny marginal cost above what the full certification will end up costing you, but it can give you the front end estimated tax, that you're going to be saving down the road when you go file that return. And you can incorporate that into your estimated tax payments that you're sending to the IRS. So if you got projects in 2025 that you're starting, if we do pre-construction studies on them, now we can go certify them from our point of view and kind of let you know, hey, there's a million, 2 million, $5 million, whatever that is. And then you can, bring that back to your CPA and start your tax planning process and incorporate that into your estimated quarterly tax payments that you have to make, and reduce your liability there. So it's a way to kind of speed up the time value benefit of the Section 179D. So with that being said, we ended a little early. This is our contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A box and I'll reply via chat. But if not, I really appreciate everybody's time today and hope you all have a great rest of your week. And I appreciate it. Thank you.